All right. So I might start with Dr. Kosha. I've had actually 3 questions along the same line, so hopefully we can deal with it. The questions all relate to, do proton pump inhibitors increase the occurrence of NETs and potentially progression of NETs, and thus should neuroendocrine tumor patients be worried about taking proton pump inhibitors?
The answer is we don't know, and I don't know that anybody's gone after the evidence. It would be a very difficult thing to actually demonstrate. In fact, we probably wouldn't be able to do a trial on it, mainly because it would be unethical to do a trial to look for making a disease worse. So theoretically it might, but practically speaking, we cannot say we've been able to tease that out. We don't really know. I'm not sure if we'll really ever know that.
Steve, and this was brought up this morning, and I think very briefly in your talk, for patients considering peptide receptor radionuclide therapies, we heard about the issues of requirement of adequate renal function. How much adequate renal function is adequate? Is this somebody with a solitary kidney, with chronic renal failure? Do they require creatinine clearance? Those types of questions.
Yeah, so the peptide therapy is the one that we're not actually offering. We're offering the MIBG therapy, and the peptide is the one that people have been traveling to Europe for. But actually, you guys are.
Yeah, so if you wanted to answer the question, I can do that. If the creatinine is higher and suggesting there's poor renal function, we will get a formal nuclear medicine renal scan and determine the GFR. In general, we want the GFR to be above 15 mils per second per 1.73 meters squared. Below that, we will tend not to treat. 50. 50. Sorry, 50, not 15.
Another question for Dr. Kosha. Is there any role, I've had 3 questions about this, any role for we're taking the example of a 40-year-old who's been diagnosed with a metastatic small bowel neuroendocrine tumor, any considerations for screening of his family?
In general, we don't have the evidence for it. What we generally use as the guideline for determining whether there's a familial tendency, and as far as we know, it's actually very, very rare. But if there's 2 or more family members who are first-degree relatives and below the age of 50, we'd be suspicious of that. Otherwise, we generally do not do that.
Question for Helen, and this is a bit more of a subjective question. Helen, you've had a role as in different types of nursing environments. Do you find looking after neuroendocrine patients rewarding compared to other types of patients?
Extremely. This has been a real learning experience, and we're growing and growing. But the opportunity for me to learn and develop the clinic has definitely been extremely rewarding.
I have one question here for Dr. Pasik, and maybe I'll take it. The question is, just for clarification, do you suggest that surgery is beneficial for a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor even if there is metastases to the liver? And I think that came from her, part of her discussion around palliative surgery. And I think how I would expect she would answer it and how I would answer it is that I think there's definitely a role in certain patients for liver-directed therapies for neuroendocrine tumors. What those therapies are, such as resection, and we heard the laundry list from Dr. Kosha's talk, I think needs to be individualized based on the extent of the disease, where other disease may or may not be. But absolutely there is a role in selected patients for liver surgery, for ablative therapies, regional therapies. And I think that's it for the written questions, but we do have a little bit more time. I'd like to open the mic if anybody wants to ask the panelists or perhaps even any of the presenters that are here from this morning any other questions. The mic is open. Sure, maybe get you to come up to the mic number 5 if you can, or you can yell.
I was just wondering, is carcinoid syndrome...
Sorry, you gotta go to the mic for translation.
Translation.
Can the mic go to her?
Oh, for translation.
I was wondering if the carcinoid syndrome is hereditary. Has there ever been any?
The carcinoid syndrome actually refers to the group of symptoms that you get if you have a neuroendocrine tumor that is productive of the hormone. So the syndrome itself is not, but I think what it's really referring to are neuroendocrine tumors have hereditary, and the answer is they of in themselves are not hereditary, but you can have the multiple endocrine neoplasias, which were discussed in one of the talks. There are very rare families in which these occur, and we know of these. There may be some other undiscovered familial tendencies that we're not well aware of, but they're very far and few between, and therefore very difficult to ferret out in this background of such uncommonness. Let's put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I'd like to thank the panel again for some superb presentations this afternoon, and overall, all presenters, I think, all deserve a round of applause for some really informative and well-presented information.